Hi everybody, my name is Hannah and this is Pepper and Pine and I have a nature project to share with you today. We are doing a very small unit study on sea turtles, and for this unit study we're going to be making some nature cards as part of our learning for this unit. It's going to involve art as well as the written portion of this lesson, and they're going to be trivia cards, so we're going to be able to use them throughout this lesson as well as other units. I'm using some Fabriano 140-pound watercolor paper. This is nice and thick. It's my new favorite watercolor paper these days. I'm going to trim this down so I've got cards that are 4.5 inches by 6 inches. It's going to be just the right size for us for this project. And I'm going to tape it down onto my painting board using some painter's tape. And this is going to give it a nice border since we're going to be doing kind of a wet on wet watercoloring technique. Alright, so I've got my distress inks and I'm going to be using these for this project, and I'm going to pull out a variety of greens and browns for this. I do really love using the distress inks for any of our nature watercolors because they have a really nice range of colors and these earthy tones, and I've just found them to be really useful in our homeschool. So I've got some blues and some greens and some browns, and I am squishing these ink pads down on a non-porous surface, and it's going to give me just enough watercolor to work with. Now for this first drawing, I'm actually not going to really need the painter's tape around each of these little cards, but for future cards I'm going to be doing almost like a wet watery look across the entire card, and having the painter's tape is going to be nice because it's going to give us a nice border. It's also going to keep the paper from shifting around. So I am just copying from some of the resource material that we have for this unit. I have a number of really gorgeously illustrated picture books, and that's going to be the art inspiration for this unit, as well as provide all of the information that we need in order to come up with the trivia questions that are going to be on the back of each of these cards. This is for kind of a Professor Noggins trivia card inspired project that we've been doing lately that I really love. So after we're done with the watercoloring on the front, we're going to flip over each card and we're going to be writing some questions that are either true and false, short answers, or multiple choice. And this way we can take all of the information that we've learned within this unit and articulate it into some questions that aren't just great for our learning experience, but also provide us some material to use for our opening activities for our future unit studies. So we really love doing this. I pulled out another book here as art inspiration, and I am going to work on just a sea turtle that is swimming in the ocean, and I tell you, this was so much harder than I expected. Out of all of our nature units, this was the one that I struggled with the most. It's, for me, really hard to get the shape the way that I wanted it to look, and I really struggled with it a lot. So I actually do, I think, 3 or 4 of these swimming turtles, and I'm not super pleased with any of them. I think in part, I also struggle with making a background, and this is where taping down the watercolor paper is so important, because in this case, I am just doing some paint across the entire card and just keeping it down flat keeps it from getting warped, and of course provides that nice border around the edge. But working with distress inks isn't really a wet on wet watercoloring technique. You can see that they're not super wet, and as you paint on your paper it can absorb and dry pretty quickly. And so really, in order to get the paint to move around, you want to maybe spray the paper first with some water, or really saturate the paper with one thin coat of watercolor before you start moving around with other paints and layer up, or just kind of get that whimsical kind of ethereal look. Especially for a unit that is about animals in the water, it's kind of nice to get that look. Okay, so I worked on 2 cards at the same time, and that was so that I could get one to dry while I was working on the other one, and vice versa. And I think that's my 3rd version of the turtle in the water, and I still don't like it. So I do a couple of these off camera to add to the set once I get to the last one. So those are the 4 that you see here, but at the very end of this video you'll see some of the other ones that I end up adding to the set. Okay, so I am just taping down a little bit more on this last card because I noticed that I didn't go all the way up to the edge and it kind of looked a little bit funny with the border, so that's why I did that. Now this is for a unit with my 8-year-old daughter and my 13-year-old son, and they both did projects for this unit as well. My daughter did not do any written work for this one, but my son went ahead and did chalk pastels for his drawing, and then he wrote his questions out in pencil. We are going to laminate these in the end, and especially when you're working with chalk pastels, you're going to want to make sure that you laminate them, otherwise that's going to shift around if you don't use a sealant for them. Okay, so I'm nearly done writing all of my questions. You can see 6 cards there because I ended up with a few more cards than we had intended to do. And here are all of my mess ups on the side that I didn't write trivia questions for on the back. And now it's time to laminate them. I'm going to use my Black & Decker laminating sheets. These are 5mm sheets. It's going to be nice and durable and fairly thick because our watercolor paper is quite thick and those laminating sheets are thick as well. I'm using my Mink machine to laminate these, but you could use any laminating machine that you want. And once I'm done laminating, we're going to trim them down so that all of them have a really small border along the edges. They are a little bit sharp, so do be careful with them once they're laminated. Now I'm going to laminate my son's work, and in general, when he is doing chalk pastels, I try to laminate them as soon as he's done with a set of 2. In this case, he was really careful about keeping them separate from his other work. I'm going to go ahead and trim these down, and we're going to play this game because it is super fun. So here's a closer look at my son's work. He did 4 cards. That's all that I had assigned for this little miniature unit. And then I ended up doing 6 because I was really struggling with my artwork for this set, and I kept redoing the ones that I didn't care for that much. All the cards have been photographed and they are on the blog post that accompanies this video on my website at pepperandpine.com. You can find that link down in the description box below. And if you want to see some of the other projects we did with our sea turtle unit, you can tap on the screen right now. And don't forget that if you want to see what our homeschool looks like on a daily basis, you can find me on Instagram at pepperandpine.